So I was originally gonna upload this video, but as far as just a upload, but I just for the sake of editing and everything, I'm just gonna just do a live stream. Hopefully there's no issues as far as the playback. So anyway, this is basically a look at modern slavery. Okay. Uh Basically there's a perception that a lot of people have is that there is no slavery anymore. That slavery was abolished in 1865, the Emancipation Proclamation, and there's no slavery. Well, what if I told you that a lot of people are in very many ways still a slave? Okay. Uh how many people have a choice to not have to work? Like, if how many people have the ability to not go to work tomorrow and basically for the rest of their life? Well, I'll tell you, most people don't. Obviously, the rush hour traffic shows that most people can't avoid going to work. So that means a lot of people, unfortunately, in some facet or another, are slaves. Okay. A lot of people do from time to time believe how kind of dark this is, and they realize their fate and they try to do something about it, possibly. Some go to the depths, with it, and the worst case scenario, some people have off themselves. I'm pretty sure about this revelation of reality, or basically the fate that they have. But I mean, if you're in a dark place, I would say don't watch this video. Maybe come back, because um this reality is basically something that people have, and it's race unabated. Doesn't have anything to do with race. What's going on, red pill sleeper cell? So I basically look at this as like three classes, okay, or actually four. So the first class is basically slaves. Then above those is like overseers, uh corporate, private, public overseers. Basically, they're your managers, basically the people that hire and fire. Then above them is the masters, of course. And fourth, as a wild card or outlier, is basically people that have the capital or wherewithal to be able to basically step outside of, or actually they have enough capital either to be a master or start their own business. Basically, they have enough money to actually have their own freedom. So those are the like four kind of classes that I see in this modern slavery. And I think a lot of people should, the reason why I'm also doing this video is because I think people do need to wake up a lot more. Like, one of the first videos that I did on my channel, like 8 or 9 years ago. I forgot how many years I had this channel, but it was an Arab dude talking about slavery, or actually talking about slaves. Like, a lot of people in other countries, they look at things a little bit different, obviously. And one of those things that they understand is certain places that there is still slavery, like in Africa. in Arabia, there's still slavery going on, actual bondage. People are, owning other people. So in America, we have the illusion that we don't have the same fate, although it might be different. Basically, a lot of people are still to a certain extent indebted to others by proxy of just basically not having enough capital, primarily. Now, the guy that does savings minus debt guy, he was actually right, and I've said that from time to time. They are that people are kind of to a certain extent debt slaves. Now, to kind of basically put things in full perspective, to a certain extent, he's also a slave as well. Because one of the things that I know about him, and it's no shade to him, he might be out of debt, he might be debt free, but one of the things about him is, if I don't know if things have changed, but last time I was listening to him, he was basically for a long time renting. He was basically renting. I don't know if he had like a roommate or whatever, but because he don't have enough money to actually buy a house or the wherewithal to buy a house, he's actually a slave to a landlord. So I mean, it's I mean that he's no different than a lot of other people. But the thing is that he's still in bondage to a certain extent, in the fact that he doesn't have enough money to afford to pay for a house. He doesn't really want to get a mortgage, which I don't blame him. Uh, and basically, he's got to pay for some place to live, and he's still paying rent somewhere. But the thing is this: that's kind of like how a lot of people are in society, where by proxy of their birth, they inherit their family's bondage. Like, your parents were working, they basically in bondage to their job, their position as far as in life. Then you inherit that. That people believe actually that there's a middle class and everything like that. I mean, it's really people in bondage and people that are not in bondage. Most people, in my opinion, are in some form of bondage. Now, the problem is, people don't know that they're in bondage. They believe that slavery ended in 1865, but they don't understand that, well, it might have ended, but there's still basically people that have to work for a living to be able to pay for expenses and pay for, usually housing. That's what people are mostly working for. I think it's like 60% of people are, I think the average cost of what people pay for housing is like 60% of their income, or over 60% of their income. So basically, a lot of people, they're working just to basically have a place to lay their head. A lot of people, they work so hard, they only go home just to sleep. So it is a reality that I want to kind of open your door to understand. It's kind of like a black pill, kind of, idea is that you might be wrong about slavery not being basically ending. Like, it might have changed as far as the plantation might be your particular job. It might be, Amazon or whatever. You, by proxy of not having enough capital to break free from the reality of not having enough capital to pay for your livelihood and your cost of living puts you in some form of bondage, and that bondage depends on you getting out of it or staying in it. And a lot of times, because people's ideology is that they're actually just, they don't really, most people don't really want to work. If I probably did a poll and I asked people, do you really want to work your job, like, or you're doing it because it pays the bills? Most people will say because it's paying the bills. Very few people will be like, oh, well, I just like my job. You know, it's a necessary evil that you have to deal with this said job so you can pay for your bills, pay your rent, pay your mortgage, pay your taxes, right? So to a certain extent, I think people need to understand that to a very much extent, a lot of people are still in bondage, are still kind of to a certain extent serfs that are beholden to corporate or public or private masters that have the ability to pay them some type of wage or salary for their work, for their toll, right? And um you know if you actually look at things from a perspective of that, you'll do something to escape that bondage, right? Like me personally, one of the things that I did was I understood that, well, basically, okay, cars, who gives a hell about cars? I got three of them. One of them is messed up. The other one I just kind of revived, figured out something as far as why the alternator, I was having alternator issues. Turns out Nissan has some type of smart plug where you basically have to unplug you. It'll mess up your charging system and leave you stalled and leave your battery uncharged, if it goes, kind of, if it gets faulty. So I unplugged the thing and turns out my car is actually charging the battery. The alternator is charging the battery. So anyway, cars really ain't no big deal. Like, a lot of people focus too much on cars, in my opinion. I think most people should probably focus on housing. Okay. Like, who cares what your car is? Focus on housing, because again, like, most people pay, like, average cost is over 60% of their income on housing. So one of the things I did a long time ago was I started, because I live in the Midwest, so you can buy abandoned properties for, let's just say, less than $100,000. Okay, so one of the things that I focused on was, all right, well, you don't really, certain places you don't really even need a car. Like, if you live in Chicago, you could kind of go without a car, even if you wanted to do, if you wanted to really save money, you could probably go without a car if you live certain places. But housing, that's kind of hard to get around, right? Housing costs are high. Now they're like double the cost of the last 5 years. The price of housing pretty much doubled, probably even tripled in some areas. But basically, one of the things that I did was I started to learn how to fix up houses. Learning how to fix up houses did a couple things. One, it allowed me the ability, it gave me the skills to basically avoid homelessness, and also avoid, to a certain extent, an extreme level of bondage. Because you got to understand, when you got a mortgage payment and rent payment every single month, that is basically you are to a certain extent a serf, beholden to some type of lord or master, that you are indebted to. And when you own your home and you have basically ownership, you have to pay the county. Okay, at the very least, you do have to pay the county, but that's pretty much it. And a lot of people's stress is tied to their, I would say, housing costs. Their people, worrying about their rent is probably getting them up out of bed at certain times of a night. Having them kind of wake up in a cold sweat, trying to figure out how they're gonna pay their rent. Well, when you deal with deal with that housing problem, I think that's a good portion of the reason why people go to their job, the reason why people are really in bondage, right? That's one of the people are getting these tiny homes and RVs, and people, it was a movement where people were sleeping in their van and stuff like that. Um, I think that works, and I'm sure that has worked for a lot of people. And it only really works if you're saving money. If you're just basically getting an RV or getting a van, and you don't have no long term financial plan, that's not going to help you in the long run. It'll help you in the short term, but it's not going to help you in the long run. So that basically is probably why people kind of crashed out with that. But yeah, I mean, it's people. I was watching a video a couple days ago. It was a young lady in her 20s. She's one of the weird sides of YouTube. It's like YouTube has all different types of like people making content. One of the weird things about YouTube, or I don't want to say weird, but the kind of tripped out things about YouTube is there's actually people on YouTube that's actually homeless that have entire channels, and it's kind of based around the fact their daily life of being a homeless person. Like this one chick, like she's got a TikTok and everything, and she goes around like sourcing food and garbage cans, and basically she plays a guitar to get to panhandle. I mean, when I saw it, it was kind of depressing. I kind of glanced at it, but I was like, oh man, she's like 20 years old. You could see the look on her face. It's like, you know, just kind of stone cold nihilist. Like, just, it's kind of depressing, man. I couldn't really, couldn't really watch engage in all of that. But it is people that's out here that are, definitely homeless, trying to they didn't fare too well in bondage, trying to pay for housing. Okay. So again, I mean, it's a way out, but what a lot of people, another thing, what a lot of people do, because I was thinking about this the other day. I was thinking about when, and I know this sounds ridiculous, right? Because I know people probably have way more money than this, but one of the things about me is I never had anything over about 10 grand at one time. Like that was like I made tons of money in my life. I mean, I've had jobs, I've made money, but I've never had like no big sum of money like 50 grand or 100 grand or anything like that. The most money I ever had was about 10 grand. That was right before I actually got my house. I had over a period of time saved some money, and I had like 10 grand. I was living with my sister, and I remember at that time, like basically I could say wholeheartedly it was a good feeling because I knew any car issues, it wasn't gonna be no issue. I know it doesn't sound. I know it. If you used to having way more money than that, I know that sounds ridiculous or whatever. But I also know how to work on cars. I know cars really well. So $10,000, you could probably get your car fixed, even if you had to swap the transmission or the engine, or you can just get another car. That's enough money to not have to, in my opinion, worry about a car. But one of the things I didn't have at that time was a house, and I just basically used all of that to get a house, to get a cheap house. Like this was before the housing prices went up. Basically, I got a house for about 10 grand, with the assignment, with basically a land contract for 2 years. But basically that's what I did. But I was thinking, well, what would you need to have? Well, and I'm thinking the Midwest. I'm thinking the Indiana area, Northwest Indiana area, Chicagoland area. What do you need to be like, okay, to have that same type of feeling or thought or notion that I had with the car, used car primarily, right? You $10,000 is enough to go. You could probably spend 5 grand and get an okay car for about 5 grand, like, which is half of that. So I was thinking, okay, what do you need to have liquid to be able to have that same notion when it comes to a house? And again, in the Midwest, primarily that would be 100 to $200,000. I would say for me 100, because again, I know how to fix up houses now. I have an actual tangible skill set because I've been doing this for years. I've developed skills to basically fix up, renovate houses a lot better than I did before. Mainly because of the house that I have now, I learned a lot. So I could probably do okay with 100 grand, 50,000 to buy the property, $50,000 to buy a property, and about put about $50,000 into it. Some of the work I'll do because I do know how to do a lot of things. Um, some of some of the work, most of the work, I'll probably have someone help me, do it, or pay someone to help me finish, certain things that I don't either know how to do really well, or that I don't know how to do it all. Okay. And I could probably do, all right, maxing out that 100 grand, and having that 100 grand would, basically be enough for me. But for most people, like I said, the Midwest, Chicagoland, primarily the Chicagoland, Northwest Indiana area, you need about 200 grand. Okay, about 200 grand to have like liquid to basically be able to buy a house, and basically be, move right into it. And this is today's prices. So you know th- that's just, kind of how I look at it. Now, one of the things I will admit is, if you don't really have a lot of expenses and a lot of debts, you can easily not have to work a traditional job. Okay. um it is a thing where, okay, and here's another thing I have to point out, and this is what I was thinking about yesterday. A lot of people that make, like, let's just say, six figures, like 150, $175,000 a year, 150, uh they have a you know they have an idea, a level of delusion, that they're so much superior than a bum on the street or a poor person of whatever category. And they believe, it's almost like they believe, just because they have an elite level education and a six-figure job, a 401k, 30K in savings, or 50K in savings, that they're fucking Jeff Bezos. And it's like the people are delusional that think like that because you're more closer to the bum panhandler on the street than Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk. You're nowhere near Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or any person on the Forbes list. You're more closer to the panhandler that barely has a dollar in his pocket than a Elon Musk or a Jeff Bezos. So for you to even think for a notion that you're so much better than a bum on the street or a poor person on welfare, you're more close to that being your peer group than some elite multi-billionaire that's on the Forbes list. But people behave and they have delusions of grandeur that they're more close to a peer group being someone on a Forbes list than someone on welfare or a bum on the street begging for change. And it's almost like laughable for people to actually believe that. And they do that every single day. They act very like almost pompous when it comes to when they think about or see someone that is basically poor. And it's like that is close to your peer group than the Ivy League guy that's a multi-billionaire that runs has ran a successful startup and has gotten funding and is on the Forbes list and company is on the New York Stock Exchange. Your peer group is the panhandlers and the people on welfare. You're more closer to them than you are those elite people that's on the Forbes list. And it's like, you tell people that and if their bubble is burst and they gotta accept it because it's reality. Even though I understand people like to be rich and everything like that. I think everybody wants to be able to have enough money to get the things they want out of life and do the things that they want out of life. But that just because you want that doesn't mean that that's your reality. Like, here's the tripped out thing about delusion, right? Let's just talk about delusion, right? You having 150,000, you work for Deloitte or whatever, and you got a executive job and you're making $175,000 a year with stock options, 401k, you got a corporate card, and you look at yourself highly, very, very highly, right? Which, okay, you should, but then you believe that you're so much better than the poorest person, almost to the level where you believe as if you're very close to being Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or fucking Warren Buffett in your mind. And the dangerous thing about a delusion, being delusional, basically being delusional, is that the difference between someone dreaming or thinking about a fantasy or something like that, is a delusion is actually a dream that you actually in real time actually believe is true. So imagine someone dreaming, which usually you do that when you're sleeping, but you're awake and you're actually living this delusional dream that is not true. And that's what people do. Okay. In that regard of them thinking of their financial class as being so superior than the poorest man. Most people are closer to the poorest people than they are the top, 50 people on the Forbes list that are, part of the billionaire class. And it's like, yeah, like his people believe that they're like right there in the middle, or They're damn near their neighbor is Jeff Bezos. Um, you know, you might. I mean, I get it. Like the delusion might you might feed your delusion because okay, let's just say just talk about Chicago. You you having that job at Deloitte or whatever it's called or the little I don't know whatever company you work for and you make 175 bands, right? Well, technically you have enough money to pull off. Not saying it's a wise decision, but you could live in the Gold Coast, which the Gold Coast is in Chicago. There are billionaires that live in the Gold Coast. You can live in one of those apartments and pay, $4 or $5,000 a month or $6,000 a month for a nice, fancy apartment. You can technically, you can do it. You can pull it off, and you can say, yeah, my neighbor was Jamie Dimon. At one time, Jamie Dimon from Chase, JP Morgan Chase, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, he did live in Chicago. You can say, okay, yeah, yeah. In your head, you think, oh, my neighbor is Jamie Dimon. I'm very close to being a billionaire because I make $175,000. And before taxes, after taxes, I only make about 130. You know, you'll think that all in your head. But reality is this. Let's say you get laid off. Can you on your own make $175,000? That's the problem. Like, I've been laid off before. I've been let go, and I've been unemployed. And normally my range of income is, I'll say it. I'll be candid. I'll be personable. My range is about 200 to close to $300 a day is what I normally make from a job. Like high end, probably like two something, 250, about 250 a day. And I'm gonna be honest, from doing certain things that would be DoorDash and gig apps and stuff like that. I'm hard pressed to make probably $110 a day of that from just my own work. And that's why people work jobs because they don't know how to make what they would make from their job outside of work. So that's why they go to work. You building up enough, a lot of times in order to make money in your own business or your own self-employment, it takes momentum to build up, clients and customers to be able to make a certain higher level of money, right? It takes a certain level of build up and that might take years, right? So like, yeah, I mean, you'll find out that that job, you know, it, it paid well, but let's just say after a year you are unemployed, you get unemployment, in Illinois it's only 6 months. You'd probably get a nice unemployment. Let's just say about your unemployment is like let's just say it's $4,000 a month. Okay, that's able to pay your bills, it's not able to pay your apartment. So you're gonna be struggling to pay for your apartment. So you'll have to basically move out, or you'll have to go through some of your $50,000 in savings to be able to pay your rent. And what you'll find out is after you basically have a lot of sleepless nights and nervous ticks and also depression, that you're nowhere near those billionaires that you think that you're close to than the poorest person that you see every day begging for change on the streets or whatever. You're more close to that reality than being close to the richest people in Forbes or even the poorest people, quote unquote, in Forbes. You're nowhere near those people. You just think in your head because you're delusional that you are. And that same delusion kind of goes into what I'm talking about in this look at modern slavery. A lot of people are delusional. They don't look at themselves as a slave. Like, okay, slavery is not necessarily you're getting whipped and you're on a plantation and you got to pick cotton in sweltering heat, but you got to get up early in the morning and go to this job, and you're not going to get whipped. You might, get an email or whatever, or talking to, if you don't do something properly or you forget to do something or whatever, but you're still in bondage. It might be not physical chains, but those physical chains is you, whatever debts that you have, whatever bills that you have. Okay, you have credit card debt, you have student loans, you got car payment for that brand new Lexus or RX-7 or whatever, Tesla. Your rent is, $1,800 a month, or your mortgage is $2,500 a month. Those things perpetuate your bondage. Your credit card bills for buying, a bunch of DoorDash and Louis Vuitton bags and perfume and, you know, trips and whatever you spend on your credit card. Those are bonding agents to your perpetual modern slavery. And that's, it's a fact, and it's like, yeah, I mean, it's depressing. That's why a lot of people, actually, one of the reasons why a lot of, especially, I'll have to admit, a lot of white people, they definitely, one of the reasons why they commit suicide is because of financial duress. And, basically, I'm not going to go too much into it, but it's one of those reasons that a lot of people, are depressed and everything like that, and they don't really know what to do about it. And it's like, it seems it's no escape, and it's like, they don't really, I don't know if they know how to really work through all of that. But the way to work through it is, you kind of have to you have to understand what's going on and try to, basically plot your escape. That's the way to deal with it. You have to actually look at it just like it is. That's why I'm doing this video, and plot your escape. Now, I understand people believe children are bonding like, what I'm saying is, everything that you got to pay for is, in my opinion, in modern slavery, are bonding agents, bonding you to have to pay for these things, and you have to work to pay for these things, right? Because if you didn't have, the less bonding agents you have, in theory, is the more you can save and the more you can, basically, retire from this slavery, right? Or escape slavery, right? Modern slavery, right? So all of these things are bonding agents. Now, children, they do have a cost involved with that. But, I don't look at my children as bonding agents. But, they do, I do have to pay for expenses for my children. Some people might, look at it as such. I mean, but I love my children, and I'm willing to pay as much as I possibly have to, take care of them. But, you don't have to, I don't love my, cars and everything else. Like, I don't have that same uh notion for those things, those material items. And a lot of people, they don't understand. Well, they're doubling down on their bondage by basically extreme consumerism, and not even knowing what they're doing until it's too late. That's why That's why a lot of people get depressed. You know, even women, because a lot of women buy a lot of fashion. They like to keep up with each other. They like to buy, jewelry, fashion, accessories, all kinds of things, right? They love to spend money, right? And those credit cards, come a knocking, right? Those credit card bills, they bond them to have to be able to pay those back. And that means they have to go to work, and they have to continue to go to work to pay those things off. So what a lot of people do is they double down on their bondage by basically overconsumption, over consuming, buying a whole bunch of liabilities to pay later, and that brand new car, because you don't believe you're a slave. Nobody told you, right? You, that new car has bonded you to 7 years, 6 years of bondage. That house that you really can't afford with that 30-year mortgage has bonded you to 30 years to pay off this house that is going to be nearly 3 times what the original amount that you borrow for over a 30-year loan term. That watch that you really wanted, that was $5,000, that you swiped your credit card, is going to put you in bondage, for however many years. Everything that you basically buy is bonding agents to your perpetual modern slavery. And I'm not gonna make this too long, but I mean, just think how many people actually don't even believe that they're a modern slave. Like this video was probably, the first time you probably thought about, or maybe you thought about it before, but you fell off of it. This video is like a reminder, or probably the first time you ever thought of yourself as a slave. You thought, slavery is something that black people had to endure in the 1800s and beyond. But no, it's everybody can get it now, and it's more dire because they have AI now. So AI does not need to that your job, insert the job, is not needed because AI is here, and it's getting smarter and adaptive, and it's learning every single day to take more of your jobs. So just think of it like this: you won't even have any bondage to go to. Won't even be any opportunity for you to possibly work off your debts, to be an indentured servant. You won't have that option. You'll just be indentured, and you won't be able to serve anyone because AI just took your job. So I know this is not good news. It's not no happy, you know, inspiring video, but it's just something that I had to remind you and also myself. There is modern slavery, like, some people call it capitalism. Now I'm not saying that people should be communists or Marxism. I am not. Man, if you look up Marxism and communism, man, it's a bloodbath. I don't want no parts of that, but I'm just saying, this is definitely, nonetheless, a lot of people that are definitely in bondage of some sorts due to factors that bond them, that basically they have to work and toil to pay off. So hopefully people can kind of like get something from this video. It's like the words of Harriet Tubman. I would have been able to help more people escape slavery if in fact they actually knew that they were actually slaves.